All right, Unity of Fredericksburg, Merry Christmas, coming to you on this Sunday, the 26th day of December. God bless each and every one of you, knowing that the Christmas spirit is strong within you on this beautiful Sunday morning. God bless each and every one of you. So today we're starting the message in the Garden of Eden. And we find Eve walking dejectedly in the garden. And she sees God and says, God, you know, I'm feeling kind of lonely here. All I do is eat apples by myself. Is there anything that you could do? God says, well, sure, I could make a man for you. She says, a man? What's that? Says, well, it's a creature. He's kind of aggressive. He's got an enormous ego. He doesn't listen very well. He kind of gets lost pretty easily, never asks for directions, right? But, you know, he's big and he's strong and he can hunt animals. And by the way, I think he'd be really fun in bed. And Eve says, wow, that sounds great. And God says, oh, one more thing. He'll want to think that I created him first. Enormous ego. Merry Christmas. So we're starting in the garden. We're starting in the Garden of Eden, which is, you know, this whole Christmas story is a journey, is really symbolic of a journey. And today I'd like to focus on the more feminine aspect of the Christmas story. I think something that we oftentimes leave to one side, right? So Eve starts the story. And here we have the Garden of Eden, which is symbolic of living a very easy and comfortable life, right? All our needs are met, right? And in that garden, it was Eve who really was uncomfortable with that comfort, right? And I think that is an important part of the story, because sometimes we get so good about living our life. We get very comfortable, right? And we know that our journey towards self-realization, toward awakening, toward God realization, whatever you want to call it, is really not a comfortable journey at all. It is really an opportunity. So in that garden, Eve decides that comfort is not where it's at. It's important that we be creative, right? And so Eve makes an important decision. She chose creativity, an opportunity for growth, over obedience. Important lesson. And I think it's a lesson that each and every one of you have made somewhere in your life, or you wouldn't be listening to me today. And so on that journey, of course, God said it's going to be painful. It's not going to be very comfortable. But we know and understand that there's nothing better to come into a fuller and greater realization of the God presence of who and what we are. Fast forward, now we're giving birth once again, but this time Eve's name is Mary. And Mary is pregnant with Jesus, right? And we know that Mary was very willing, very surrendered, very centered. And Mary says yes to Gabriel. And Gabriel is not a bearer of good news to our comfort zone, right? Gabriel is speaking against our comfort zone. Says your life's going to change pretty radically. The life of the world is going to change pretty radically through you giving birth to what is in your womb. Now Mary, being very wise, says yes to this journey, right? She's surrendered. She says, I'm willing. Let's go for it. Let's give birth to the Christ consciousness. Oof. And in that Magnifica, that the Catholic Church celebrates. It's in the Bible, Luke 1:45. The first lines are so powerful. Mary says, "My soul magnifies the Lord. My soul magnifies the Lord." What a beautiful expression of God's love and power. My soul magnifies the Lord. It is a magnificent expression of declaration of who and what she is. My soul magnifies the Lord. And so, of course, we go forth to give birth. Just invite you to imagine that you too are pregnant with the Christ consciousness, right? That you want to give way, you want to give birth to the full expression of that consciousness in your life. Now, the 14th century German mystic, Meister Eckhart, one of my favorites, he talked about Christmas time, and he said Christmas time is all about birth, but in truth, we're always having Christmas. We're always being involved with a new birth. And he identifies three births for us, so that he says we are born into God. Number two, God is born in us. And number three, we are born as children of God. And he explains what he means. He says, number one, we are born into God. And what he means by that is that magical moment, and when we came to understand that that which we called God is a real experience. It is not just empty faith, but it is something very real in our lives, something we can't see, we can't touch, totally invisible to us, but we understand that there is a higher power. And of course, when we think about that, when we're born into God, when we're born into that awakening, that awareness that God is, right? We're coming into that awareness. So many stories like Paul on the road to Damascus, right? I'm thinking for myself of that magical moment I think I might have shared with you once upon a time when I was rock climbing in Alaska, fell off the rock and fell flat on my back with two protruding sharp rocks cradling my chest cavity right on the side of my arms. If my body had turned slightly, those rocks would have sliced me in half, right? My back would have been just cracked right in half, but I fell exactly between those two parallel rocks. It was a time in my life when I was questioning the presence of God. And I remember standing up from that and looking at my outline in the dust and looking up at the sky and just knowing in my heart, God, you are real. God, I believe. I know. It's not a belief anymore. It's a knowing. God, I know. This is not this is not a coincidence. This is real. That's the moment that Meister Eckhart is talking about. We are born into God. And so on this day, as we're celebrating Christmas, I just invite you to remember that moment, or maybe those moments in your life. There's power in that story. In fact, if you sit down to have some leftover, right, Christmas dinner, it might be a great topic of conversation. When you came into an awareness, an understanding, a knowing that yes, God exists, God is. It became very real for you. Even though you may have grown up in the church, maybe some people had talked to you about it and had told you, and you had said that you believe and yes and all that, but there probably was a moment when there was a birth experience of knowing that God is, right? And that's what Meister Eckhart is talking about. It's a beautiful moment. Now he goes on to talk about the second birth. God is born in us. Now this is a beautiful moment because now we understand that God is, but we're coming into a closer proximity with God. we begin to understand the activity of God within us. We begin to mature in that awareness, that presence and power. We begin to develop our prayer life, and we find different ways of coming into harmony with that presence and power. Maybe we find unity. Maybe we find our own journey. Maybe we find a path that really helps us. We take classes. We read books. We're hungry. We're pregnant now with this desire for more of God in our life. We've seen that it's real, and we're hungry for more, right? And of course, this is a lifelong journey, right? This is something that happens to us all the time. And it has to do a lot with what Mary demonstrated to us in our willingness, right? When she said yes to that angel Gabriel, the bearer of bad news to the comfort zone, right? When she said yes to that, she's saying yes to an unfolding of a deeper understanding of who and what she is. And that's what we've done. We've made that commitment. We've made that intention. Again, you wouldn't be listening to me this morning if you weren't in that camp as well, wanting that fuller expression. And so it does call for us to surrender, to say yes, to let go of all of the littleness, and to stay firmly rooted in love, unconditional love, to the best of our ability. Just today, I work in a healthcare center, and I deal with some people who have all kinds of both physical and psychological challenges. And there's this one man who he has some paranoia. He believes the mob is after him. He believes that in his lifetime he has seen a mob doing terrible, violent deeds, and he likes to describe these to me, right? So he tells me about when he looked out the window and saw somebody being murdered, and how they're being attacked, and how he's being followed, and how his telephone is tapped, and it goes on and on and on. And today I listened to him, and I was thinking about this message and the idea of love. I said, what he is saying is not as important as who he is. So I let the words come in. I heard what he was saying, but I gave it little importance. I gave more importance to looking at him and seeing in him the full reflection of the God presence. And so I sat there very comfortably now, even though he was talking about awful things. If I really, got into the vision of that, it would be really terrible. But I kept on a vision. I just forced myself to stay on the vision of seeing him as that beautiful child of God that he is. I know you've done something similar. But something fantastic happened, as we were talking. I asked him, I said, Jerry, how is it that with all of this violence and negativity that surrounds you, how do you stay so centered and peaceful? If it was me, I think I might go crazy with all this stuff that you're talking about. He tells me a story I'd never heard before. He says, when I was a boy, I was awakened in the middle of the night. And I looked out the window, and I saw the stars. But the stars formed into angels. And the angels came and they talked to me. And they told me that in this world and in this life, I will see some terrible things. But they told me very clearly that none of that is real. That the only truth is that God is love. Can you believe that? Here, this guy, he was just all this negativity a moment ago, and now he's preaching, telling me that it's all an illusion, and that the only thing real is God's love. And that's how, he says, he keeps his peace and his balance. This was amazing. This was fantastic. In his own way, I believe this man, through his own psychological and physical challenges, has found some solid ground in the God presence within him. And in the same way, you and I have that same opportunity. every day. Look beyond the smallness, beyond our judgments, our condemnations, beyond our fear, to see love, to perceive love, to know love, to see these terrible acts of our brothers and sisters and know that it's a call for love. And we're asked all the time to give birth to that love, right? From that highest perception of who and what we are. This is a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful opportunity. Not easy many times, particularly for those people closest to us, who we know so well, we expect so much from. And when we see them down or negative or acting out, it is sometimes so hard for us to really acknowledge that, surrender that, and to, dear God, please help me release all of this small perception and see the one presence, the one power within them. Then, of course, Meister Eckhart talked about a third birth, and he says, we are born as children of God. And now we're coming into a much fuller birth, right? This is an awareness of our oneness now with God. God is not just a power, a presence, a higher power that we pray to, but it is really an inner experience that flows in and through us. It is a wonderful opportunity for us to recognize that God is and I am. God is and I am. Jesus said, only the Father recognizes the Son, and only the Son recognizes the Father. If you were a ray of light from the sunshine, right? If you were a ray of light from the sun, your many protons, filing down towards Earth. Your essence as that light, that beam of light, is the same as the source. And if you were to look around at the other rays that are with you, you would see the exact same source and the exact same expression. Light recognizes light. Light perceives light. Light is the only true reality. And so in that knowledge, now we're giving birth to a much deeper awareness of our oneness with God, where there is no duality, but one presence, one power, one truth in our life, of which we are. Again, this is a beautiful practice, right? It's a beautiful opportunity for us each and every day to give expression to that, to remind ourselves of that, to look in the mirror and remind ourselves that I'm a beloved child of God, worthy of all the blessings of the universe, and that in truth, God is I am. God is I am. Helen Schuckman, who was the scribe of the Course in Miracles, wrote this. It's called the Holiness of Christmas. I'd like to read it to you because I think it's pertinent to what we're talking about today. Helen writes, Christmas is holy only if you come in silence to the manger to behold your holiness made visible to you. I'm going to repeat that first line. Christmas is holy if you come in silence to the manger to behold your holiness made visible to you. Your gifts are but open hands made clean of grasping. Nothing else you lay before the newly born except your doubts and fears, your pale illusions, your sickly pride, your hidden venom, and your little love, your meager treasures and unfaithfulness to all the gifts that God has given you. Here at the altar lay all this aside, and let the door of heaven open wide, and hear the angels sing of peace on earth. For Christmas is the time of your rebirth. Christmas is the time of your rebirth. Oh, she said it so beautifully. To come to the manger in silence and to behold the holiness that you are. That's what it's about. That's what oneness with God is all about. And so, of course, we struggle with this. Sometimes we struggle with forgiveness. I've recently been reminded of the Ho'oponopono process, very powerful process of coming into oneness with somebody that challenges you. Right? You remember the 4 phrases, I'm sorry. Right? Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Right? Holding the image of the person, maybe even anything that you judge yourself for. Right? I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. A little step that helps us release that, lay all that fear that Helen was talking about at the altar, right? We struggle to stay mindful during the day, taking breaths, maybe using things to remind ourselves to stay mindful, to stay present, to stay aware. We use these things, maybe an alarm on your phone, every time a notification comes in, you know, those bells that ring on your phone, take 3 breaths. Recognize God is, I am. God is, I am. Maybe it's time every time you see the color blue. Maybe it's time every time you put your hand on a doorknob. Just a moment, a split second to remember to know your oneness with God. To breathe in compassion, to give compassion, to offer compassion, to stay mindful. And of course, I think Mary said it beautifully. My soul magnifies the Lord. I think it's a short affirmation that summarizes Helen's message, right? My soul magnifies the Lord. A beautiful expression of who and what we are. So here's my challenge to you. Wake up in the morning, 5 days in a row. Look yourself in the mirror. Put up your hand. Look yourself deeply in the eye. Hand on your heart. My soul magnifies the Lord. What am I affirming? I'm affirming that who I am expands, gives birth to the soul, the Christ consciousness on planet Earth. And who I am magnifies that truth in this realm. My soul magnifies the Lord. My soul magnifies the Lord. Or any version of that works for you. This is how we can behold ourselves in that manger as the Holy One, right? And I think that's what it's all about. My soul magnifies the Lord. And so on this beautiful day, dear friends, greeting you at a distance, but knowing our absolute oneness, I salute you. I greet you. I welcome you as fellow travelers in this very oftentimes uncomfortable journey that leads us to the true expression of Christmas every day. Every day. My soul magnifies the Lord. God bless each and every one of you. And Merry Christmas.